What kind of an impact do you think you make on others around you? Any at all? Do you think that you're an influence? Do you think enough of yourself, good or bad, to think that somehow what you do, what you say, and how you think rubs off on anybody else? Well, regardless, how you behave, how you talk, how you conduct yourself really does have an impact on everyone around you. I say everyone. I just mean the people that know you, the people that talk to you, the people that you come into contact with, whether it's just scant contact, whether it's repeated, whatever the case might be. It could be your kids, it could be your friends, your coworkers, but you have an impact on the people around you. And everything you say, everything you do makes a difference. Now, you would be led to believe, probably, that it doesn't, and that you shouldn't even consider that. You should just be yourself and be whoever you want to be. Just be your true self. It doesn't really matter what anybody else thinks. That's what I hear so often. But I would say that it does matter, and you do have a responsibility to be prudent with how you comport yourself. And the reason why is because all the little things make the big differences. The accumulation. And, it really came to my mind lately. It really made me think more about it. And when I read about something, and I thought it'd be a good illustration for this topic. I was reading in this book about amputations and phantom limbs. I know that sounds strange, but it just happened to be the topic at that time in the book. And it was giving a rundown of the history and how the brain seems to relay information back and forth to limbs that used to be there. But so it talked about the Civil War, the Crimean War, and during the days when amputations were abundant, when doctors in wars would perform hundreds of amputations a day. And the fact they would be so covered with blood that their fingernails would become soft. That was a complaint among doctors. And back during those days, the Crimean War, the Civil War, back during those times, there was no antiseptic. Now, there was talk about things you could do to take measures to not spread infection. Infection as well as they could understand it back then. But it wasn't really greatly understood. So doctors would go into these patients who come off the battlefield, and these doctors would be covered in blood, the blood of so many other men, just covered in it. They go in with dirty, bloody hands, bloody aprons, bloody tools, bloody saws, bloody bandages, and can just go right in and work on the next soldier, sawing off a limb here and there, and then moving. And it would take about approximately 4 minutes to do this. 4 minutes. And so they would just go, several people would be helping and assisting the doctor. They'd get through with this one, they'd go next, and they'd move on to the next guy. And they would just do this time after time, scores of men. Well, in one particular case, Florence Nightingale, I guess you could call her the mother of modern nursing. I don't know, maybe that's not the most appropriate term. I don't really know what would be, but she's a familiar name to most people. Anybody that's been to school. My kids would even know who Florence Nightingale is. At least they would know the name. But she, back in the Crimean War, she had seen an amputation done where a doctor blundered his way through the amputation. It became sloppy. And in cutting off a soldier's limb, he became careless. He not only was cutting through the soldier's limb, but he cut himself, and he sloppily cut another individual that was standing by. All 3 men died. And Florence Nightingale said it was the only surgery she ever witnessed where there was a 300% mortality. That's quite a consequence, quite a fallout when you think about it. But it's not much different than what we witness now. I guess there was a time, a day and age, at least in our country, when people cared about how they conducted themselves, how they acted, how they behaved, how they talked, because there was an assumed responsibility. But not so much anymore. I mean, I think some people care about it, but I don't think all people do. And now what you have is a bunch of young people who have no idea where the lines are drawn. They don't know the perimeters. They don't know the boundaries, because there are no boundaries to them. Now, don't get me wrong. People have boundaries. And as soon as you cross their boundaries, they will let you know. But these young people did not get here this way by themselves. They didn't get to these issues of, is it right to kill a child in the womb? Is there really more than two genders? How far do rights extend? And the rights for everybody, when they don't even know what rights are. They don't even know what rights are talking about in terms of the topics that they're discussing. They don't know. There's no boundaries. And they didn't get there by themselves. They got there by sloppy people around them. Now, this could have taken place in universities. It could have taken place in homes. It could have taken place in schools. It could have taken place with friends. But they didn't get there by themselves. But they got there by people around them who were sloppy, inept, and blundering. And there's not a whole lot we can do about some of these people. We can only be responsible for ourselves. So my suggestion is, stop to think about how you're living your life and ask yourself if you're sloppy, if how you talk really matters. Now, I've got 4 kids, and it's funny to me when I look over things I have documented over the years, the things that my kids have said that are funny, anecdotes. And I look back and realize how they thought. And I realize now, more than I did then, how much my kids thought of me and my wife. How much we actually influenced them. And I'm afraid to say that I haven't always been absolutely careful. I think in some ways I've been sloppy. And I've just gotten sloppier. So it's really given me a lot to think about. I've heard someone say that what we do in moderation, our kids will do in excess. I don't know that that's always true. In fact, I know it's not always true. But if there's even a scintilla of truth to it, I don't want to be the reason my kids took a downward spiral. And we're not talking about just kids here. Even as adults, we can be influenced. I can certainly be influenced. And I really hope that in some way, the videos that I've made and the topics that I've talked about have influenced you in some way, for the positive, in a positive way. And so I just hope that that we don't create a toxic environment for the people around us, whether they be young or old. There's a difference between toxic behavior and a toxic personality. See, these doctors covered with blood were extremely toxic. And that's why this doctor, being sloppy as he was, ended up killing himself, the individual that was standing by, and the soldier he was working on, because he was sloppy. He was toxic. So, I'm not suggesting that he obviously they did not have a lot of the information that we do now. So it's easy to suggest that they didn't know any better, but we know better. We know the consequences of our actions. And I hope you can hear me over this lawnmower. So anyway, it's really loud. But my point here is that don't be toxic. Stop to think about how you conduct yourself, how you comport yourself, and if there's any toxicity to it whatsoever. Like I said, there's a difference between toxic personality and toxic behavior. Behaviors are hard to change. I'm sorry. No, I got that the other way around. Toxic personalities are hard to change. They're hard to adjust. You need therapy for them. But toxic behaviors are just things that happen in the moment because you might have had a weak moment. You might have had made a bad decision, and you can rectify it. All right, guys, I really hope that I've made myself clear. I hope I haven't become too distracted by the abundance of noise around me to where I've lost you and lost my own train of thought. I don't think I have. But I appreciate your time. Thanks for watching. And if you have any comments to make them below. And feel free to subscribe and share it if you like, if it meant anything to you. All right, guys, catch you later. Got to go to work. Bye-bye.